and welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're going to be making apple streusel muffins. Now this does not have cinnamon in it. I want to just be forthright about that. Usually you hear apple cinnamon streusel muffins, but this one has no cinnamon. But I love cinnamon, so I'm not anti-cinnamon, but this actually is, they taste really good this way. So just follow me here and I think you'll be happy with the results. Now, one thing I want to say real quick, it's been bothering me since I said it in one of my last videos that I never ever use recipes. That's not true. I use recipes all the time. As a matter of fact, this recipe that I'm using today is from this recipe book that I stole from my mom. Right here. And I've been using this since I learned how to cook and bake, which was I was probably 8 or 9 years old. And it has a lot of my favorites in it, including my recipe for eclairs. And I didn't even realize I had stolen it until she was like, you know, I can't find my family circle baking favorite recipe book. Do you have it? I'm like, no, I don't have that. And then I realized I did, but I still haven't given it back to her. And I know my mom watches these videos, so I love you, Mama. I'm sorry. I will give it back to you, but first I gotta copy some recipes out of it. So anyway, I do use recipes. What I meant by that when I said that is there's a lot of things that I've made up, like I've just made, and for that I have no written recipe. And that's what I meant by that. So I always have to kind of judge what I do. So anyway, I just wanted to clear that up because it's been weighing on my conscience. I felt like a big fat liar and I don't want to feel like that. So anyway, now that that's over and I've confessed to you, we can start baking. Okay, so what we have here is 2 cups of sifted flour, okay? And to that, we're going to add a 1/2 cup of sugar. This is just regular white sugar. And a tablespoon of baking powder, which I had to make this morning because I ran out. So that's fresh baking powder. And then here is a teaspoon of salt. And we're just going to, I'm looking at my ingredients thinking, is that everything? Yes, that's everything for now. We're just going to give this a nice little stir, like this, just to get all those dry ingredients incorporated well. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add to that a stick of butter, or a 1/2 cup, however you want to refer to it. And we're going to use our pastry blender. I think I've talked to you before about a pastry blender in one of my last videos. But, so we're going to use a pastry blender to get this all blended together. So I may start that to show you how to do it and then come back to it. I am cutting this butter into smaller chunks because it does help you to not have to spend your rest of your existence blending this into coarse crumbs. So cut up your butter into smaller chunks. It is a lot easier in the long run. A little bit of work doing this, it makes it easier. Okay, so what you're gonna do is, I've talked to you before about a pastry blender. This is what it looks like. Thanks, babe. Sorry. I never know exactly where to place my bowl. So what you do with a pastry blender is you just, with your butter, or sometimes it's Crisco or whatever, but in this case butter and flour mixture, you just blend it. I don't know how else to say it. You just
if you don't have pastry blenders or something else you could use.
Oh, good question. So yeah, there is. You can use 2 knives in a like scissor fashion, or the other thing I suppose that would work pretty well is actual kitchen scissors, and you just would take those 2 knives and scissor them through the mixture. What you're doing with this is, as you can see, you're chopping up the butter into smaller pieces. Now, you do want to use cold butter for this too. We've talked before about when we were making the lemon bars that sometimes you need softened butter and sometimes you need cold butter. And you really shouldn't try to interchange those. If it says softened butter, it means softened. If it says cold, it means cold. And the reason is, it has to do with when the muffin bakes, the chemistry of the fat being cold. It just makes different texture and all of that. So baking really is science. Science was my favorite subject in school. And so that's probably why I like baking so much. To me, it just makes sense in my mind. So anyway. Okay, so I don't really want to make you guys have to sit here and watch this. So this is probably going to take me, 3 to 5 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and put you on pause. And when I get back, I'll show you what the texture should be. Okay, we are back. Now, I wanted to show you something. There's 2 things I want to say. Number 1 is, as whether you use a knife or, oh look, my hands. Whether you use a knife or a pastry blender, you're going to want to keep scraping that butter off of those things so that it keeps incorporating. And when you get to where you think you're done, which would be, you don't really feel any big chunks of butter anymore. You can see that there's little butter granules all mixed in with your flour. Then what I like to do is, with my hands, I just kind of go through like this and make sure that everything is broken up and that I don't actually still have any chunks of butter in there. And I don't. Now, those bigger pieces you might be seeing, they're just where the flour clumps together because it has butter in it. See? But it's not actual clumps of butter. Okay? So that's the consistency and what you're looking for. Now, to this, or what we're going to do at this point is, I'm just going to brush off my hands there. We're going to take about a half cup of this. This is 3/4 of a cup. So I'm not going to fill it all the way. But we're going to take about a half cup of this mixture and just set it in a different bowl, because that's going to become our streusel topping when we're done. Or when we get to that point, I should say, not when we're done. Okay, so to the rest of this, we're going to take, this is a medium tart apple that I just cut up in tiny pieces. Now, because I had to prepare it beforehand and I didn't want it to turn brown, I did take about a teaspoon of the flour that I had already sifted and add it to this, just so it wouldn't oxidize and turn brown. But you don't have to do that step. So you're just going to cut up a medium tart apple. I always try to pick my oldest apple in the fridge for this, because it doesn't matter, and it's a good way to use up those apples that are kind of ugly that no one's going to eat because they have a weird mark in them or a brown spot on their skin, because you can cut all around that and none's the wiser. So you're going to peel it and chop it into pretty small pieces. I'll hold up one of them. They're small, thin, and they're pretty small size too. And the reason you want that is because these are muffins. Now, granted, today, this recipe makes either a dozen regular size muffins or 6 jumbos. And I'm going to use my jumbo muffin pan. One, because I don't like to be a slave to sitting here all day. I want to have a cup of coffee. And 2, because I prefer jumbo muffins. You eat one, you're done. You don't feel as bad as when you eat 2 smaller ones, because you only had 1 muffin. You're not a big pig. Okay, so anyway, we're going to just take those apples and toss them in our flour, just like that. Okay? Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Now, if you remember from I think it was my carrot cake video, tossing them in that flour coats them with the flour so that they'll stay distributed throughout the muffin instead of trying to clump all up. Now, in a separate bowl, or sink to the bottom, not clump up, sink to the bottom. In a separate bowl, we're gonna take 2 eggs. Well, actually it's 1 egg. I have 2 eggs in here because my friend Catherine, who gives me eggs from her chickens, she gave me some pullet eggs. And when pullets are starting to lay, they lay little tiny eggs. So I'm using 2 to make the equivalent of 1. So we're gonna just take those and that egg, 1 large egg, and we're going to whisk it up in our bowl, just like that. And to that, we're gonna add 2/3 cup milk. So 1 egg, 2/3 cup milk, and just give that a little whiskey stir to incorporate that. And then I'm just looking, always looking to see, make sure I haven't forgotten anything. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna add, I like to make a little well, just because I think it distributes a little bit evenly. So now I'm gonna tell you a little something. And this is true for brownies too, and pancakes. The more you beat them, the tougher they get. Okay, so muffins, brownies, pancakes, probably some other things that I can't think of off the top of my head. If you mix and mix and mix and mix and mix, they will get tough and their texture will get all weird. Now, if you do this very carefully and don't overmix, you will end up with the softest, fluffiest muffins you've ever had in your life. I love this recipe. So what we're gonna do is, once we've made our little well with our flour and apple mixture, we're gonna add all at once our egg and milk mixture. And we're gonna stir this as little as possible. Yes, your batter's gonna be lumpy. Yes, you're gonna want to, in your obsessive compulsiveness, stir it more. But the less you stir it, remember, the better the texture of the muffin. Okay? So that's literally it. As you can see, everything is incorporated. There's still, a couple little dry spots here and there, but it's not going to matter. That's it. That's all we're doing. That is the end of our stirring. So let me grab my, by the way, I really prefer when I'm making stuff like muffins, I really like a wooden, and I really like this little dude with the hole in it. There's probably a fancy name for him, but I call him the little dude with the hole in it. Okay. So what you're going to do now is, in a muffin tin, you could line these with liners, but I just spray it with Baker's Joy. Now you can, if you don't have jumbo muffin tins, you can use a regular cupcake or muffin tin, and you can either line them with paper or spray them with Baker's Joy or some grease and flour and whatever. But I use just this. This is a normal size ice cream scoop for my jumbo one, and I just plop the batter in the tin, just like this. That's what I love about, and I use these, I have all different sizes of ice cream scoops that I use for cookies, I use for cupcakes, and then you get really nice uniform baked goods. So I do have a little extra left, so I'll just kind of split it amongst the 6. Maybe. There we go. It has to do what I want it to do, or it's going to be in grand trouble. All right. Never wasting any drop of our precious little batter because it's delicious. Okay, so now that's done. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make, and I'm going to stay down here, Bri. I'm picking up on your social cues. I promise. I can't stand baking in mess, guys. It drives me batty. So let me give this a wipe down. Okay, there we go. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is make the streusel topping. Now, I've told you before, we're allergic to nuts. So, normally you would add some nuts here, chopped walnuts or pecans, I suppose. The recipe calls for walnuts. But since we're allergic, we're not doing that. You could, at this point, if you wanted cinnamon streusel, excuse me, you could add a teaspoon of that, but a teaspoon of cinnamon. But I told you, trust me on this, they're really good without the cinnamon too. So here is our reserved half cup of the flour and baking soda powder and salt and sugar butter mixture. To that, we're going to add 2 tablespoons more of just white sugar. And this is the one thing I forgot. Let me grab a fork here and a wee spoon. Nice shot. Sometimes we watch these videos and I'm very impressed with my husband's camera abilities with this cell phone camera. Anyway, just stir in that sugar into your crumbly mixture. Oh, and one thing I should mention too is this recipe actually calls for the zest of 1 lemon. And if you have that on hand, putting that lemon zest in this right here is so good. But I don't have a lemon on hand. I briefly entertained using an orange, but I wasn't sure how it would taste and I didn't want to ruin my muffins. So zest of 1 lemon goes in here, and nuts if you want, if you are not allergic, and if you have the zest. And then, like I said, you could add some cinnamon if you would like. But once you've got that 2 tablespoons of sugar mixed in, then you just take and you sprinkle this right on top like that. And there's really no rhyme. And even though it looks like, man, that's a lot of flour on top of there, that's gonna taste weird and be all dry. No, some of it sinks into the muffin and some of it just makes this yummy sugary crust on top. So just split up whatever is left over the 6 and boom, you're done. Okay, so those are ready for the oven. Now, we're going to take and plop these into a very hot oven, 425 degrees. Out of the way, buddy. They're after their ball, Jaden. That's why they won't stay out. There we go. 425 degree oven. Just like that. For 20 minutes. And so we're going to let these bake. And at the end of 20 minutes, I'll come back and show you what we've got. Okay, we are back. My Alexa timer just went off, saying that 20 minutes has expired.
There are no timers set.
Oh, and now you can hear her. Sometimes I feel like I live in a circus, especially when the dogs won't get out of the kitchen. Okay. They are done. My point in saying all this is that they are done. So this is what they'll look like when they come out of the oven. You can see what I was talking about. A lot of our flour streusel mixel. Oh. That's so funny to me. lot of our flour streusel mixture has sunken into the muffins, and the rest of it has made a beautiful little cracked crust, just like I promised you. Now you can see that that they're golden brown along the edges, and even a little bit on top. And you know, that's exactly what you're looking for. If you touch one of them, they just gently bounce back. That's perfect. So what I really want to show you the inside texture. I usually don't show you like after I'm done baking a cake or anything how it turned out on the inside. But these I really do, because I sat there and harped on you about how not to overmix it. And so I really want to show you that when you heed that, the texture that you'll get at the end. And plus that will give me a chance to get the tears off of my face from laughing so hard at myself. So I'm gonna let these cool for just a second, go compose myself, and when I come back, I'll cut a muffin for you. Okay, we are back, and I have composed myself. I don't know why that tickled my funny bone so badly, but woo! It's a good laugh. I mean, you need that, what, serotonin? Is that what's released? I think so. Anyway, I've got my serotonin levels up. Here we go. So they're out of the pan. You can see I've gotten most of them on the cooling rack. They're a nice golden brown here. You'll know they're ready to come out of the muffin pan because they'll pull away. Do you see that on that corner there? How it's kind of pulled away from the pan? So that means they're ready to be released. And I just use a little fork and pull up on it, and boom. Okay. So as you remember, I did not put paper liners on mine, so we're gonna just be able to freely cut these. And I wanted to do that in front of you. So here I have a sharp knife that will go through this like butter. And then I wanted to show you that texture. You can see you got apples throughout the whole thing. There's steam coming off. Look at that beautiful texture. They are light and fluffy, guys. And I'm telling you, they melt in your mouth. I don't know if some of you will remember last year for when we had Passover, we had a gentleman come from Chosen People Ministries. He stayed with us at our home, and I made these the next morning, and it's what I make to impress guests because they are just so delicious, and he could not believe that we made these like here. So they are very, very good, very, very impressive for your guests and for your family. So if you want to make them feel like you slaved away, here's your go-to recipe. So anyway, now my family and I are going to enjoy some breakfast and some coffee and maybe a game of cards before we get our day started. So, or continue with our day started, actually, I should say. But that's my recipe for you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed a good laugh with me on Mixel. And other than that, I just want to tell you guys that I love you. Again, Mama, I apologize for stealing your book. I will get it back to you. I love you and Dad a lot. And we love you guys. And God's gonna get us through this. He's got this.